I never expected to hear my mother dismiss my entire existence with a single phrase. But there it was, floating through the kitchen doorway like poison gas while I stood frozen, dish towel in hand, barely breathing. "Oh, don't worry about Lila," my mother said into her phone, her voice dripping with that sugary tone she reserved for important conversations. "She's just the help around here. We need to focus on Sarah's piano recital. It could be her big break." My name is Lila, and at 22, I'd spent most of my life being my family's backbone while simultaneously being treated like their shadow. The eldest of 5 sisters, I'd changed more diapers than my mother and cooked more meals than I could count. But hearing myself reduced to just the help, that was new. That was different. I gripped the kitchen counter, my knuckles turning white. Through the doorway, I could see my mother pacing in her designer heels, gesturing animatedly as she discussed my 10-year-old sister's upcoming performance. Sarah, the golden child, the one who got private lessons while I worked part-time jobs to help pay our bills. "The dress alone is costing a fortune," Mother continued. "But Frank says it's worth every penny. You should see how she lights up on stage, Caroline. She's going to be somebody special. Unlike me, apparently." The sound of piano scales drifted down from upstairs, Sarah practicing as always. The notes felt like tiny needles in my skin now. I'd given up my own piano lessons at 12 so Sarah could start hers. "You're the big sister," Mother had said then. "You understand, don't you?" I'd understood too much for too long. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably another text from Nora or Elise, my younger sisters, asking when dinner would be ready. They were old enough to know better, but young enough to still follow the family pattern. At 16 and 14, they lived in the space between Sarah's spotlight and my shadows. "Of course we'll need photos," Mother laughed into the phone. "Professional ones, naturally. We can't have anything less for our little star." I thought about the stack of college brochures hidden under my mattress, the ones I'd been secretly collecting. The acceptance letter from state that arrived yesterday, buried at the bottom of my sock drawer. The small savings account I'd built up over years of babysitting and weekend jobs, unknown to my parents. My father's heavy footsteps sounded on the front porch. Home early from work, probably to take Sarah to her extra practice session. I had about 30 seconds before he'd walk in, expecting dinner to be ready. That's when I made my decision. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I'd never dared to call before. My grandmother Edna's contact info, given to me years ago by a sympathetic aunt at a family funeral. Mother had cut ties with her own mother long ago, for reasons she never discussed. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Hi Grandma Edna. This is Lila. I know we've never met, but I need someone to talk to. Someone who might understand." The kitchen timer beeped, reminding me about the casserole in the oven. Father's keys jingled in the lock. Upstairs, Sarah hit a wrong note and started the scale again. I hit send. Then I straightened my spine, pulled on my oven mitts, and prepared to serve another perfect family dinner, maybe one of my last. Because in that moment I knew I wasn't just the help. And soon, they'd all understand exactly what that meant. My phone vibrated almost immediately with a response, but I couldn't check it yet. I had to get through this dinner first, had to keep playing my part. But for the first time in years, I felt something dangerous and wonderful unfurling in my chest. Hope. Grandma Edna's response changed everything. After 3 days of secret text messages and late-night calls, she invited me to meet her at a small cafe downtown. I told my mother I was picking up extra hours at work, a lie she barely acknowledged while helping Sarah practice her scales. The cafe was quiet when I walked in, just a few morning stragglers nursing their coffees. And there she was, my grandmother, sitting straight-backed in a corner booth, elegant in a deep blue blazer. She looked nothing like the villain my mother had painted her as over the years. "Lila," she said, standing to embrace me. Her perfume reminded me of gardenias. "You look just like your mother did at your age." Before she stopped speaking to you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Edna's smile turned wistful. "Ah, so we're jumping right in. Good. I always preferred honest conversations." She gestured for me to sit. "Tell me about the acceptance letter." I nearly knocked over my water glass. "How did you?" "I made some calls to State University after your first message. I still have friends on the board." She stirred her tea with precise movements. "Full scholarship offer, but you haven't told your parents yet, have you?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Elise. "Where are you?" "Mom's freaking out. Sarah's dress fitting got moved up." "Let me guess," Edna said, watching my face. "Family emergency?" I showed her the text. Another one came through. She's threatening to take away Sarah's piano time if you don't show up. Classic Marjorie, Edna murmured, using one child to control another. I should go, I said, gathering my purse. I can't let Sarah lose her practice time. She has that recital coming up. Sit down, Lila. Edna's voice was gentle but firm. Let's talk about what you want for once. My phone kept buzzing. I turned it face down on the table. I can help you, she continued. Not just with college. I can help you build a life that's yours. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. A trust fund I set up when you were born. Your mother never knew about it. My hands shook as I opened it. The number on the statement made my vision blur. But why? Because I saw this coming, she said simply. I saw how Marjorie was already playing favorites with you girls. History repeating itself. She took a sip of tea. She did the same thing to your Aunt Catherine before cutting me out of her life. I had an aunt. Mother had never mentioned a sister. The cafe door chimed. I looked up and froze. Nora stood there, her art portfolio clutched to her chest, eyes wide with recognition. I followed you, she blurted out. I'm sorry, but I knew something was going on and... She looked at Edna. You're our grandmother? Edna's face softened. Hello, Nora. Your artwork is extraordinary, by the way. I saw your piece in the youth gallery downtown last month. Nora's cheeks flushed. You saw that? Mom and Dad didn't even go to the opening. Of course they didn't, I muttered. My phone buzzed again. Mother this time. Your selfishness is ruining Sarah's big day. Come home now. Nora read the message over my shoulder and squared her shoulders. I'm staying here with you and Grandma Edna. Something shifted in my chest, pride, maybe, or relief. I wasn't alone anymore. Edna smiled at us both. Well then, shall we order some real breakfast and talk about your futures? Both of them. As we settled in to talk, I felt the weight of years of obligation starting to crack. But beneath that weight was something stronger. The foundation of a new kind of family, built on choice rather than duty. My phone kept buzzing, but for the first time in my life, I let it ring. I knew the moment I walked into our house that everything was about to explode. The acceptance letter from State University sat on the kitchen counter, torn open. Mother stood by the window, her back rigid, while Father's face had that dangerous stillness I'd learned to fear over the years. When were you planning to tell us? Mother's voice was eerily calm. I set my bag down slowly, buying time. I was waiting for the right moment. The right moment? Father picked up the letter. Like after you'd already abandoned your family? After you'd betrayed everything we've sacrificed for you. Sacrificed? The word tasted bitter. What exactly have you sacrificed for me? A sharp intake of breath from the doorway made me turn. Sarah stood there in her new recital dress, watching with those calculating eyes that made her seem far older than 10. You're leaving? She asked, her voice trembling perfectly. But my big performance. You promised to help me practice. Don't worry, sweetheart. Mother rushed to comfort her. Lila's not going anywhere. She understands her responsibilities. My responsibilities? Something snapped inside me. Like being unpaid help? Like giving up every dream I've ever had so Sarah can have her moment in the spotlight. That's enough. Father's fist came down on the counter. You will not speak about your sister that way. Why not? Because she's the only one who matters. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking as I pulled up the recording from that day. Mother's voice filled the kitchen. She's just the help around here. The color drained from Mother's face. You recorded me? I didn't have to. It's burned into my memory. I turned to Sarah. Just like I remember giving up my piano lessons for you. My art classes. My summer camp money. Everything. Sarah's lower lip quivered, her signature move when she wanted attention. But before she could speak, Nora appeared behind her. She's right, Nora said quietly. We all know it's true. Mother whirled around. Nora, go to your room. This doesn't concern you. Actually, it concerns all of us. Elise stepped out from behind Nora. And we're tired of pretending it doesn't. Father's face darkened. This is about that woman, isn't it? Your grandmother's been filling your head with nonsense. Grandma Edna told me the truth. I shot back. About Aunt Catherine, about why you cut her out, Mother. About how you did the same thing to your sister that you're doing to me. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Sarah stopped her performance, looking confused. You have no right, Mother whispered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I pulled out the trust fund papers from my bag. And I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm going to college. I'm building my own life. If you walk out that door, Father's voice was low, dangerous. Don't expect to come back. I looked at my sisters, Nora's determined face, Elisa's quiet support, and Sarah's calculating stare. I'm not abandoning them, I said. Unlike you, I know what family really means. You ungrateful. Mother started, but I cut her off. I'm grateful, actually. You've taught me exactly what kind of parent I never want to be. I grabbed my pre-packed bag from behind the couch. I'd known this moment was coming, and headed for the door. Nora and Elise moved to follow me, but I shook my head slightly. They needed to stay for now. We had a plan. Lila, Sarah called out, her voice suddenly stripped of its usual manipulation. For a moment, she sounded genuinely scared. Don't go. I paused at the door, looking back at my youngest sister. When you're ready to be real with me, Sarah, you know how to reach me. Until then, enjoy your spotlight. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, but it might as well have been a thunderclap. As I walked to my car, where Grandma Edna waited, I could hear Mother's sobs and Father's angry voice. But for the first time in my life, those sounds didn't control me. I was finally writing my own story. College should have felt like freedom. Instead, my dorm room walls seemed to close in a little more each day. 3 months into my first semester, and the silence from home was deafening, broken only by secret late-night calls with Nora and Elise. They've hired a new housekeeper, Nora whispered during one such call. Mother keeps introducing her as part of the family. You should see the way she looks at your old photos when she says it. I pressed my forehead against the cool window glass, watching students cross the quad below. And Sarah, still playing the perfect daughter. But, Nora hesitated. Something's different. She keeps asking about you when Mother and Father aren't around. A knock at my door made me jump. I have to go, I whispered, ending the call. It was my roommate, Katie, holding up 2 coffee cups like peace offerings. Your grandmother's downstairs. I hadn't expected Edna today. When I reached the lobby, she was examining the bulletin board with a frown. These student activities are dreadfully dull, she said by way of greeting. Get your coat. We're having lunch off campus. At the restaurant, she waited until our food arrived before dropping her bomb. Your mother came to see me yesterday. My fork clattered against the plate. What? She wanted to know if I was funding your education. Edna's eyes were sharp. She's been asking questions about your Aunt Catherine, too. Did you tell her? Nothing she doesn't already know deep down. Edna sipped her water. But that's not why I'm here. Your sister Elise called me this morning. My heart stopped. Is she okay? She's fine. But Sarah's piano recital is next week. The one you helped her prepare for before. She let the words hang. Before I abandoned them? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Before you chose yourself, Edna corrected. But now Sarah's refusing to perform. Says it doesn't feel right without you there. I laughed harshly. Another manipulation. She's probably just nervous and... She's been sleeping in your bed. Edna's words cut through my defenses. Elise found her there last night, clutching your old music books. The image hit me like a physical blow. I remembered finding Sarah doing the same thing after our Aunt Catherine had left, though I hadn't known then who Catherine was or why she'd disappeared. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know I'm supposed to hate you now, but I keep messing up the middle section, and you're the only one who knows how to fix it. She's just a child, Edna said softly. A child who's realizing that being the favorite comes with its own kind of prison. Don't. I stood up abruptly. Don't make me feel guilty for finally breaking free. Guilt? Edna raised an eyebrow. No, dear. I'm suggesting you have power now. Real power. The question is, what will you do with it? Another text came through, this time from Elise. Mother's talking about sending Sarah to boarding school if she doesn't snap out of it. Please help. The familiar urge to rescue, to fix everything, rose up in my chest. But underneath it was something new, a realization that helping didn't have to mean surrendering. I need to think, I told Edna. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Just remember, revenge might feel good, but liberation is better. For everyone. Back in my dorm room, I stared at Sarah's text for a long time before finally responding. The middle section isn't the problem. You're playing it perfectly. But perfect isn't the same as real. Then I opened my laptop and bought a ticket to the recital. Not because they needed me, but because I needed to prove, to myself most of all, that I could walk back into that house on my own terms. This time, I wouldn't be the help. I'd be the hurricane. Sarah's recital was in full swing when I slipped into the back of the auditorium. She sat at the grand piano, her white dress gleaming under the spotlight, but something was off. Her usually perfect posture was rigid, her movements mechanical. Then I saw why. Mother stood in the wings, mouthing along to every note, conducting our sister's performance like a puppet master. I hadn't planned to come backstage afterward, but Nora grabbed my arm during the applause. See this. She led me through the familiar hallways of the music school, where I'd spent countless hours practicing with Sarah. Voices echoed from the green room, Mother's shrill tone cutting through the walls. That was sloppy, Serafina. What happened to the middle section? We practiced it 100 times. I'm sorry, Sorry doesn't win competitions. Sorry doesn't get into Juilliard's youth program. Do you want to end up like Lila? I stepped into the doorway, Nora close behind. Like me? You mean independent? College-educated. Mother spun around, her face draining of color. Sarah sat on the piano bench, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. You have no right to be here, Mother hissed. Actually, I do. I pulled out my old student ID. I still teach here part-time. Helps pay for college. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Before anyone could speak, a man in an expensive suit appeared behind me. Miss Harrington? I'm Miles Donovan from the Juilliard Selection Committee. I was hoping to discuss your sister's performance. Mother's expression shifted instantly to her society smile. Of course. Serafina would be honored. Actually, Miles cut in smoothly. I was hoping to speak with Lila. Your teaching reputation precedes you. The silence that followed was delicious. I felt Mother's world tilting as Miles continued. Several of your students have been accepted to our program. Your methods are unconventional but effective. She's not Sarah's teacher, Mother snapped. She's nobody. That's where you're wrong. Nora stepped forward. Lila's been teaching Sarah for months. Through video calls late at night. Why do you think she suddenly started playing with actual emotion instead of just technical precision? Mother turned to Sarah, who seemed to shrink further into herself. Is this true? Before Sarah could answer, Miles spoke again. Mrs. Harrington, we're not just looking for technical perfection. We want students who understand music, who feel it, like your daughter demonstrated today. In the middle section particularly. I caught Sarah's eye, seeing the ghost of a smile at our private joke about that middle section. But Mother wasn't finished. This is ridiculous. Lila abandoned this family. She has no right to interfere with Sarah's future. Actually, a new voice joined in, Grandmother Edna, elegant as ever in her signature blue. Lila has every right, especially since she's just been appointed to our family's seat on the music school's board of directors. Mother's face went from white to red. You can't. I can, and I did. Edna's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. It's time for changes, Marjorie. Starting with how we define family. Sarah suddenly stood up, her small hands balled into fists. I don't want to go to Juilliard. The room froze. I don't want to play piano anymore. Not like this. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. I want to be real, like you said. Mother reached for her, but Sarah stepped back, closer to me. The movement was small, but its meaning was seismic. Well, Miles said into the tension. I think I have what I need. He handed me his card. Call my office Monday. We should discuss your teaching methods further. As he left, I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. This wasn't the revenge I'd imagined. It was something more powerful. The truth finally breaking through years of carefully maintained facades. Mother stood there, her perfect world crumbling, while Sarah reached for my hand. The hurricane had arrived, but it wasn't destroying everything in its path. It was clearing the air. The wedding invitations sat on my desk like ticking bombs. 6 cream-colored envelopes, each addressed in the calligraphy Grandmother Edna had insisted upon. My hand shook as I reached for the one marked Mr. and Mrs. Frank Harrington. You don't have to send them, Miles said from the doorway of our apartment. No one would blame you. I sealed the envelope instead of answering. 3 years had passed since Sarah's recital, since everything changed. Or maybe nothing had changed at all. My phone buzzed, Nora's daily update. Mother's redecorating your old room. Again, says it needs to be perfect for when you come to your senses. Another text followed. Sarah asked if she could be your flower girl. Mother threw a fit. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Edna stood there, looking unusually pale. We need to talk. She didn't wait for an invitation, walking straight to my kitchen table. Your mother came to see me yesterday. About the wedding. My stomach dropped. What did she want? To negotiate. Edna's voice was careful. She's willing to attend, to bring the whole family on one condition. Of course there's a condition. I laughed bitterly. What is it? That you resign from the music school board. Give up your teaching position. Let Sarah resume her path to Juilliard. The room spun slightly. After 3 years? Sarah doesn't even play anymore. She does now. Your mother's been forcing her to practice again. Says it's time to fix the damage you caused. My phone buzzed again, Elise this time. Sarah locked herself in the bathroom. Won't stop crying. What do we do? Miles touched my shoulder. Lila, maybe we should postpone. No. I stood up abruptly. I won't let them hijack this too. They're either coming as family or not at all. There's more, Edna said quietly. Your father. He's sick. Heart problems. Your mother says this might be his last chance to see you married. The manipulation was so obvious it should have been laughable. Instead, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My phone rang, Sarah's number. I hadn't heard her voice in months. Against my better judgment, I answered. Please, she whispered. Please just do what they want. I can't take it anymore. I'll play whatever they want, be whatever they want. Just make it stop. Sura. They're destroying everything you built, she continued, her voice breaking. The scholarship program for underprivileged students, the community concerts. Mothers using father's condition to pressure the board. They're voting next week to reverse everything. I looked at the wedding invitations, at Miles's worried face, at Edna's knowing eyes. 3 years of building something real, something that helped people, and Mother was systematically dismantling it all. What would you do? I asked Edna. She smiled sadly. I already did it, dear. 30 years ago, I chose freedom over family. I'm still not sure if it was worth the cost. My phone buzzed again, a photo from Nora. Sarah at the piano, her face blank, Mother standing over her with that familiar, controlling smile. Behind them, barely visible, was Father in his armchair, looking thinner than I remembered. The invitations go out tomorrow, I said finally. As planned. And the board position? Edna asked. I reached for my laptop, pulled up my resignation letter. The one I'd drafted weeks ago, sensing this moment would come. One click, and I could end this by peace for my sisters, maybe even reconciliation with my parents. Instead, I closed the laptop. Tell Mother she can come to the wedding or not. Her choice. But I'm done letting her choices control my life. As Edna left, another text came through from Sarah. I hate you for leaving me here. And I hate myself for wishing I was brave enough to do the same. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting my face. And behind it, the empty chairs where family should have been. The call came during my morning class. Grandmother Edna, gone in her sleep. Peaceful, they said, as if that made it better. As if anything could make it better. I wasn't prepared for what waited at the lawyer's office. My entire family, arranged like players on a chess board. Mother and Father by the window, Nora and Elise huddled together on a leather couch, and Sarah perched on the edge of a chair, watching me with those calculating eyes. Now that we're all here, the lawyer began, but Mother cut him off. Is this really necessary? Surely any arrangements can be handled by immediate family. I am immediate family, I said quietly. More immediate than you've been for years. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Harrington, your mother was very specific about this meeting. Everyone must be present for the reading. He pulled out a thick envelope. The bulk of the estate goes to Lila. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees, including control of the family's educational trust and music school board positions. He paused. With one condition. Of course there was a condition. There was always a condition. The inheritance is contingent upon Lila establishing a new scholarship program. For siblings separated by family estrangement. Mother's laugh was brittle. How appropriate. There's more, the lawyer continued. A separate trust for Nora and Elise's education. And a letter for Sarah. Sarah's head snapped up. For me. He handed her an envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. This is impossible. Mother stood up. Edna had no right. She had every right. Father's voice was unexpectedly quiet. Just like Catherine did. The name hung in the air like smoke. Don't, Mother warned. Your sister made her choice, Father continued. Just like Lila did. Just like Sarah is trying to. Sarah was still reading her letter, tears streaming down her face. She knew, Sarah whispered. Grandma Edna knew everything. About the panic attacks before recitals. About practicing until my fingers bled because it was never good enough. About wishing I could disappear like Lila did. Serafina, that's enough, Mother started. No, it's not. Sarah stood up, letter clutched to her chest. She left me money too. But not for Juilliard. For therapy. The silence that followed was deafening. This ends now, I said, standing to face Mother. The manipulation, the control, the turning us against each other. It ends today. You have no right. I have every right. And now I have the power to back it up. I turned to my sisters. Nora, Elise, you're coming to live with me and Miles. We've already arranged transfers to schools near us. Mother went pale. You can't. Actually, she can, the lawyer interjected. The educational trust gives her full guardianship rights. And Sarah, Mother's voice was dangerous now. I looked at my youngest sister, really looked at her. Behind the perfect posture and practiced smile, I saw what Edna must have seen, a scared child desperate to break free. That's her choice, I said softly. For once in her life, let it be her choice. Sarah stood up slowly, her letter still clutched tight. She took one step toward Mother, then another toward me. Then she stopped exactly between us. I choose me, she whispered. I choose to get help, to figure out who I am without the piano, without the pressure. She looked at Mother. Without you telling me who I have to be. Mother grabbed her purse, heading for the door. You'll regret this. All of you. No, Father said, still in that quiet voice. They won't. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and did something I'd never seen before. He walked away from Mother toward us. The lawyer smiled slightly. Shall we discuss the details of that scholarship program, Miss Harrington? I sat down, my sisters and father arranging themselves around me like a shield wall. Yes, I said, watching Mother's retreating back. Let's build something new. 1 year later, I stood in Grandmother Edna's garden, watching Sarah deadhead roses with careful precision. Her therapist had suggested gardening as an outlet, something to create that didn't require perfection. The irony wasn't lost on me. Do you ever miss it? I asked. The piano? She considered the question, pruning shears pausing mid-snip. Sometimes. But I miss the music, not the pressure. She looked up at me. I started writing songs instead. On guitar. Is that okay? You don't need my permission, Sarah. I know. But I want your opinion. Sister to sister, not teacher to student. Inside the house, I could hear Nora and Elise arguing over college applications. Father's voice drifted out, mediating their debate with the patience he'd finally found after leaving Mother. She'd moved to Boston last month, chasing some dream of starting over. None of us had heard from her since. Miles appeared on the porch, carrying a stack of manila envelopes. First batch of scholarship applications just came in. The Catherine Edna Harrington Scholarship for Family Reconciliation. Grandmother's last gift, turning our pain into purpose. Already we'd helped 3 sets of siblings reunite, rebuild, redefine what family meant. Can I help review them? Sarah asked, setting down her shears. I think I might understand what they're going through. I studied my youngest sister. No longer the perfect porcelain doll Mother had crafted, but something far more valuable. A real person with scars and strength all her own. Actually, I said, I was hoping you'd join the selection committee permanently. You and Nora both. Her eyes widened. Really? Really? And Elise can take over the summer music program once she finishes high school. If she wants. What about you? Sarah asked quietly. I'm stepping back a bit. Miles and I are thinking about starting a family of our own. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and fear. Would I become like Mother? Would history repeat itself? Sarah must have read my thoughts. You're not her, she said firmly. You never were. Inside, Nora had started playing something on the old upright piano we'd rescued from storage. Not classical, but something original, wild and free and imperfect. Elise's voice joined in, followed by Father's surprised laugh. I found Mother's diary, Sarah said suddenly. From when she was my age. She wanted to be a singer, did you know that? But her parents said no. Said it wasn't proper for a Harrington. I hadn't known that. It explained so much, yet changed nothing. She sent me a text last week, Sarah continued. Asked if I'd come visit her in Boston. Just me. My hands clenched involuntarily. What did you say? I told her I'd think about it. But only if you came with me. She met my eyes. We either heal together or not at all. Miles stepped off the porch, applications tucked under his arm. First committee meeting starts in 10 minutes. You two ready? I looked at my sister, really looked at her. At the dirt under her fingernails, the sun on her face, the quiet confidence that had replaced her desperate need to please. Then at the house behind us, filled with the messy, beautiful sound of family being redefined. Almost, I said. Sarah, help me with one last rose bush. Grandma Edna always said gardens need both roots and new growth to thrive. She picked up her shears, a small smile playing at her lips. Like families. Like families. Together, we turned back to the garden, cutting away dead wood to make room for fresh blooms. Behind us, Nora's music drifted through the open windows, carrying the sound of possibility on the summer breeze. Not an ending, exactly. More like a new beginning, rooted in truth instead of pretense. In love instead of obligation. In the kind of strength that comes from being broken and rebuilding together. Just the way Grandma Edna would have wanted it. Edna would have wanted it. Edna would have wanted it. Edna would have wanted it.